meeting to order at 6:30. And I believe a sign-in sheet is, there it is. Has everybody signed in? I see 3 signatures. Thank you for being here. Are there,
agendas? I'm sorry.
do we have any extra agendas?
Right up here.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Take a minute to take a look. Are there any new additions to the agenda?
I have a personnel matter to
Okay, so that would be under,
New business?
Executive session.
okay, thank you. And then, any changes in the agenda order proposed? All right, let's get going. Approval of minutes from August 24th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Opposed? Okay, great.
You're gonna abstain.
I'm
because you weren't
abstaining.
here. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you want me to get Penny now, or do you want? Whenever
Sure,
you're ready.
yeah, that would be great. So Penny, Marina, our town clerk and town treasurer, agreed to just run over for new board members and anybody who was interested, who was, we had talked a little bit at the last meeting about delinquencies, and so I thought it'd be good for people to understand the process of how we deal with delinquencies in property taxes. So Penny graciously offered to stick around and give us a little update on that. So we'll just wait for her and then let her walk us through their process. Hi Penny, thanks for being here. You're on.
I'm on?
You're on.
Okay. Well, I have to use my notes here.
That's
Did all the
fine.
select board get the?
The
Never
VLCT?
mind. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, you all know, or most of you know, January 1 of 15, I was appointed the delinquent tax collector. And when that change took place, there were also changes in the way we've done the delinquent collections in the past. So we've put a policy in place and procedures, which feel free to look at this. It was run by a lawyer to start with before we proceeded forward. It took us several months to develop the policy and procedure and schedule for the collection to happen.
Who was us? You and Pete?
Pete, myself, and Ellie. It's a joint kind of a group effort. And we used Jody French, who is very familiar with tax sales and delinquencies. Once we got all our policies in place, which took 3 or 4 months.
Ellie Minan's assistant town clerk and assistant town treasurer. She's assistant to both offices, correct?
Assistant clerk.
Okay, sorry.
And also in that process is anything that I may need help with, she kind of
Right, that's
works
right.
with us.
Yeah.
Due to in the past she was an auditor, so she's familiar with numbers and she can report. She doesn't really give numbers, but she can report or any questions from the auditor as a group effort, and we can work together with that. So once all this was put in place, then we sent it to Jody, who prior to that, when we first started this process, she had come to the office free of charge for about 2 hours, explaining to us what we needed to do going forward. So then she did look at it, made a few minor adjustments and suggestions, and once all that was finalized, then July 1, we've moved forward with the delinquencies, collections, and our policy is in place. And it's a several step process. So as you look through the book, we started, of course, with letters and the policy of 30 days. People need to come in and set up an agreement with me as the collector.
A payment agreement.
Yes, and once that's taken place, or we hope it does, and it says right in the letter, if you look at it, if they don't comply or come in, then we go to the next step. And it's just a step process. And we know this is gonna take a while to happen. We're still in the learning process of this, but as of right now, just to give you an idea, in October, we had delinquencies of $512,000.
That was 14?
Yeah.
Yes.
October 14th.
October
500, how much?
12,000.
Yeah, we haven't got to 15 yet, Troy.
And as of July 2015, which would have been July 1st, we're down to 290.
That's very impressive.
And this is before you started sending out your official new stuff on July 1st.
The 512,000 was prior to me being appointed as delinquent tax
Yeah.
collector.
But in terms of when you started giving information to the people who were delinquent, when did that happen?
Actually, January 1, we sent a letter out letting everybody know, whoever was on the list, of the changes that took place and will be taking place. And that letter actually, I got several phone calls and several people came in.
Good.
And it's just been improving as each month goes by. And people know I'm serious. That was one of the statements made to me.
Yeah.
One of the delinquencies we had, it's all taken care of, it's behind him, and he's moving forward. So, and just to give you an idea, in the past, the penalty that goes with whatever tax year delinquency is 8%. That went to the old delinquent tax collector, which could be anywhere from $20,000 to $27,000 per year she made in income. That penalty comes to the town. I do not collect anything. And just to give you an idea, since January, we have collected $8,000 in penalties that have come back to the town. It goes into the general fund
So
as an
unanticipated
income.
general fund increase.
As an income. The handbook, the policies and procedures are in the office. Anybody is welcome to come in to look at them. They have any questions. We do have in the vault. Every month when we send out the delinquent bills, we also print a report which lists individuals and years and how much. That is public knowledge. It is here if anybody wants to look at it. I have the delinquent tax collector handbook right in that black binder, no, in the black binder. Again, anybody can look at that. That is public information. And we do have a policy book with our agreements. That is
The
really,
individual agreements, or the
Yes.
agreements with individuals?
yes, with payment plans, whatever our agreement is. I have that. That's really personal information. I mean, that's
Yeah.
between the property owner and me.
Right.
So I
So
do
that's
have-
not public, yeah.
No, but as far as the actual reports from month to month and the policy and procedures in the handbook, anybody has any questions, they can certainly look at that. So going forward, because of March, we have some new select board members. I thought it was time I actually updated you all and brought you up to speed as to what we are doing with the
Yeah, no, I think
delinquencies.
it's very useful. I also have a couple questions, but I don't know if other
Please,
people do.
go ahead and we'll take them from other people, but you can start off.
So, how different is the procedure from July 1st as opposed to the beforehand? I mean, are there any stark differences, or is it just that you're being more diligent and,
As of July 1, we are actually following our policy. Prior to that, we were setting up and getting,
no, I understand this, but from
policy
the
together.
previous practices, not,
oh, you mean the
Yeah,
past?
yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. There was a policy, but it was not enforced.
Mhm.
There were no written agreements.
Yeah,
Um,
so
I
the,
don't know much about it, except there was.
so the major
something-
difference is, there's not that much policy difference,
Right.
it's more enforcement and follow-through.
Correct. Yes.
Good. Is the,
We're just following what the town report
right,
has said for years.
excellent. And is there any, and I haven't noticed on the website, on the town website, is there anything on the website about about this policy being enforced and,
We do have something on there about delinquencies. I'm not sure how far we've gotten with that or updating it,
Mhm.
because as of July 1, we just started the
Yeah.
actual
It would be a good
policy.
thing to have, just the policy, you know, as you said, the steps. This happens first, then this, then this, so anybody can see
Yeah,
that.
that is something certainly,
I mean, we've
Okay.
talked about having all the policies online anyway, but it just seems like this is a pretty important one for the financial health of the town.
yeah. No, we do have something about delinquencies, but to tell you the truth, I haven't looked at it for a
Mm.
while, so it would be a matter of updating it, and we can certainly do that.
So any other questions for Penny?
I'd like to say, I think the economy being the way it is, that you've done a hell of a job getting the black taxis brought up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really.
Well,
Steve?
We know you mean, but I
Oh,
didn't know
sorry,
what
Dick, I
that
didn't
means.
mean to. Are you done? I didn't mean to interrupt you, I apologize.
The old tax policy said that, you know, you had to pay. You had to pay on time. If you didn't pay on time, there was a penalty. And none of the taxes, none of the payments would be accepted without the penalty.
Correct.
But that 6 month, if you were in arrears for more than 6 months without some kind of some kind of accepted monthly payment plan, which had to get you up to speed and totally 100% by the next tax time, the property would go up for tax sale. Right? Is that still the policy?
yes and no.
Okay. How about the no
Because of
part?
the past, and even though there was a policy there, nothing took place as far as following it. Because we need to, what do I want to say? We're not here to just take somebody's property away. We want to help them. So even though we have an agreement and it says a year, working with me, it can be longer than that based on what is in front of me. Are they 1 year, 2 years delinquent? Are they 8, 10 years delinquent? Everybody's an individual and there are different circumstances and situations. So coming and talking to me, that's where we're working with the property owner. Maybe a bank we're working with. Yeah, it's not gonna go up for tax sale just because. No, we really wanna help this person keep their property. But if they don't follow the policy, once the agreement, like I said, then there's a next step and another one, and we will follow through with that.
I think what has
So it's
been,
in compliance with what our policy is.
I think what was discouraging to some people was when, if somebody was like, as you said, 8 or 9 or 10 years and they were paying, you know, $5 a month, you know, clearly, you know, that felt like, well, why should anybody bother paying your taxes?
Right.
Yes, they're kind of complying,
Right.
but not really, so.
Right, and that has been kind of in the past, but no longer. They have to come in and set up an agreement, whatever it may be.
So, based on the town report, you know, if they have an asterisk, they've either paid, if they have 1 asterisk, they've paid up. If they have 2 asterisks, they've got an accepted payment plan, right?
Yes, we haven't gotten that far yet because we've just started this, so that would be, I mean, something we would certainly think about, or maybe even word a little differently.
So
in
what
the
you're really
town
saying is
report.
that this is still a work in progress?
Yes,
You're still
yes.
trying to see how it works. It appears to be working at this point from the amount of money collected.
Right,
Right. The only
Yes.
thing that I would raise is a question that if there's too many exceptions to what the policy is, you might better rewrite the policy than have a policy that says in 6 months. I mean, one of the things I was gonna raise tonight is this a realistic policy that the town has now? That, you have to pay within 12 months. If you don't, your property goes up for tax. Seems. I mean,
well, that's where that's where you would need to read the agreement, because there is some wiggle room there.
So that the
That
agreement
it-
is like a buyout,
It
so you can.
it is written for 12 months, but it could be, I'm extending some to 24 months. Because we have a window that we need to shift in a way of thinking, in that this is a policy and it's gonna work for the town. And it's gonna take us a couple years to get up to speed and where we need to be. So even though the policy says a year, again, that's where we're working with individuals and we're trying to help them.
Right.
And it's the ones that don't comply or come in, then yeah, that is gonna
You
be
know roughly-
applicable to them.
You know roughly how many people are under delinquent tax roll now?
All I can say is in January 1, we printed off 76 tax bills. August 1st, we printed off 42.
So that means 42 are on the delinquent tax list.
So, yes,
So
But
30.
that's,
34 have now paid up.
so in, roughly speaking, you've collected 60% of the delinquent taxes. And you have another 40% if you have approximately 220,000 more to go, right?
Yeah.
I mean, roughly
No,
speaking.
She's collected like
No.
40.
512 minus 290
Is
is like
290's
it's
left.
two.
Oh,
290's
No, we
left.
had 290
Oh,
Two
it's
left.
290 left.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
So it's
40 you've collected and
40
60 to
collected,
go.
60 to go.
How confident are you that that 60% is collectible?
I feel pretty good about it. I can't give you any numbers because, like I said, we just started the policy enforcing it July 1. So it's still really new, except people are responding. And that's what we want.
Is it a fair statement to say that you're trying to collect back taxes, not put them in the poorhouse and lose the property?
Right, no, we're there to help the property owner.
Go ahead, Kenny.
So out of the people that you've contacted since July 1, do you have a percentage of how many have actually contacted you back? I mean, are there people that are just ignoring you still, or?
I don't know the percentage, but I've written probably 10 agreements. And actually, I had somebody come in today, and I have a couple more that I'm gonna be doing within the next couple of weeks. Yeah. So it's, like I said, it's a learning curve. It's a process we have to do, and it's the people that care or really want their place, and for whatever reasons, it's easy if you've gotten away with it, so I'm not gonna bother, but they know now, you do need to make payments. So it's gonna be those people that we're able to keep, and unfortunately, there's always a few select people that it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Steve, you have another question?
Yeah, I would just take a look at these numbers at some point. From the town report, it says as of June 30th, 2014, there was 333,000 rounded off taxes due. And you said as of October 1 of 2014, there was 512,000 due. So are we to assume that in that time frame from June, so the end of June, so July, August, and September, in 3 months, it went from $330,000 to $512,000?
Yes, because
Yeah.
you're going by the fiscal year prior to. So then, the book you're looking at, we went now into another tax year, just like now, a month from now, 2015 taxes are gonna be due. So that number is gonna change again, because you always have a handful of people that, I totally spaced it. I forgot to pay my taxes.
$200,000.
So then, you're gonna have,
It's spaced
there's
out.
there's
a lot
a,
of space cadets.
there's a, well, there can be, and depending on the, tax bill, it could be a significant amount of that 9%, 8% penalty and 1% interest.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Penny on this? Penny, thank you. I'm thrilled that you took time to come in, as you said, new select board people, but also the other thing, even for us old select board members, you know, it's a new process. And it's a new effort, really, to sort of ramp up, make more business-like the process, and yet still maintain that our goal is to keep people in their homes and help them make a plan to pay their taxes, so.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask one last question? How much of your time is spent doing this?
Hard to say, because I'm bouncing all over the place. Yeah.
Different times a year, like right now, you know, taxes are front
Yeah.
and center.
Plus, people don't realize I'm doing voting, even though it's not for another whole year, because the state's changing the whole system, and I've got meetings and obligations, which I will be emailing to BCA checklist. Yeah, it's hard to say, because I'm clerk and treasurer, and there's just so many different roads that I take every day. Yeah, I've never sat there and actually figured out my time.
Becky?
I can just comment, just, you know, from passing through the office and everything, sometimes she could be working with a landowner, you know, for an hour. I mean, that could happen a couple of times a week, and it's just, I mean, that's just that one person, so, and, you know, she really takes the time to make it personal with the people. It's not just, hey, here's a number and this is, you know, where we're at, and it's.
Which begs the question, you know, this as an, you know, as you pointed out, this is an added role for you, and nothing came off the plate, except Ellie, you know, Ellie's support was integrated into this plan. So are you feeling that this is manageable?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it is. We have a good group of people
Mhm.
that their interest is for the town, and that's what we're here for, in a wide spectrum of ideas and different work.
Good job, thanks.
So stay right where you are, because next topic was the website updates, and we had wanted to talk with you about this because we had decided at our last meeting to be sure that we thought it would be a good idea that at least select board policies be on the website, that they be, you know, they're public documents, and that they be put on the website. And I think that since you're kind of the keeper of the website, we just wanted to have that discussion with you, see if you have any concerns or any questions about that.
No, I think the policies, you know, if they're public information, there's a fine line between personnel policies and policies that are applicable to the town, like the capital policy, that's voted on by the town. So that I have no problem with.
Right.
Um,
So let's talk about the personnel policy for a minute, though, because that's one that actually came up at the last meeting. And I think that people felt that it would be, am I right in remembering?
Shouldn't be on there.
So you thought, okay, so I think I had thought we had talked about it, but it sounds like we have mixed feelings. How do other people feel? Which policies do you think should perhaps not be public?
In my experience, personnel policies that apply across the board to everybody should be public documents. It's that you don't want individual personnel records anywhere on the website.
Right.
But if there's the drug and alcohol policy should be up there. The personnel policy should be up there. You know, The one that, I mean, there's a, I don't know, 25-page document that applies to every town employee.
My argument to that would be you dealt with the private sector. And here you're dealing with a small group of people working in a municipality that are exposed to Johnny Q public every day and can come up with some reason to say, well, why didn't he do this, or I saw him doing that, because it's in the policy. I think there's a fine line between private, I'm gonna say a big line between the private sector and the municipal sector.
The documents that we approved, these policies, they're public though.
Yeah.
I mean, they were in the
They're
meeting
totally
minutes,
public.
They're public,
Yeah.
but
and somebody could ask for them.
yes.
So there's
So
no reason
what's
to make
the
it more
difference?
difficult to
Well,
get
I
it.
guess, if they can come and ask for them, it almost looks like I'm hiding something if we
Right.
decide not to put it on the website.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. If it's already a public document and they could come in the office and say, I want to see the personnel, what did the select board approve as far as the personnel policy? To me, that's no different than putting it on the website.
Troy, do you have a thought about this? I think I have a sense of where Sheila comes down and where Gabby comes down, where Dick comes down.
I'm staying out, that's fine.
What we had in the past is we had policies, we said internal use only. I think that you raised a really good point, Gabby. These are public documents, in a sense, that we've approved them publicly. There's nothing about them about any individual in there
Right, as long as
whatsoever.
Right.
And if we can go online and it's attached to our meeting minutes, it's actually probably on the website already.
Yeah.
Okay, so my only question is, the drug and alcohol, okay, you guys had to approve that. You
Mhm.
approved it in a public meeting.
Yes, we did.
Okay,
Yeah.
then that I have no problem with.
Right.
The drug and alcohol actually is only applicable to the road crew because of the CDL license.
Right, right.
So,
But it doesn't actually even matter to whom it's applicable.
no,
It
no,
is
no.
the town-wide
Just
policy,
saying,
you know.
yeah, if they're approved in.
And the
public
personnel
meeting.
policy we approved in a public meeting. I mean, I
Yeah.
think all of them we have to.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah.
So,
Once they've been approved and signed,
they're public.
Looks like we have two that are drafts.
So, Dick, do you have a thought about that? If they're, we did, I mean, they are, we circulate them in the meetings, they're attached to the minutes, as you pointed out, Penny. The drug and alcohol policy, we went around about, as we did with the personnel policy, so.
yeah, once they're signed off on,
Mhm.
then I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
It's just, like you said, in draft form or you're going back and forth, it doesn't make sense to.
No.
I just think you're putting fodder out there for the cynical down people that we do have.
I feel
to
like-
jump on that.
I
But
think
they're
though that Gabby
accountable.
raised a good point, if you're making it harder for them to, to find information, maybe that puts more fodder out there, like what are you trying to hide or something, I don't know.
Well, I think we have a good website, and, the way we have it set up, I mean, if anybody wants to know something, pretty much, they can click on and, find what they're looking for.
Mhm.
Or they call and I can direct them where they need to be. So, yeah, and it would just go under, we'd probably just set up a policies like we have ordinances.
Yeah.
So it's just a generic,
Yeah, you have
General
ordinances,
information.
policies, and documents. I
yeah,
mean, you don't have policies right now, but.
but we can just add.
So we discussed this at our last meeting, but we didn't really take a vote. I think we had a discussion about it. And, let's see, all policies need to be clarified and an inventory provided. Oh, yes, we did. Sheila made a motion to post all policies on the town website. Dick seconded, unanimous, so motion carried. So, but we just wanted to be sure, since you're the keeper of the website, this
Be
is it.
unanimous if I'm in it.
You
seconded it.
Yeah,
Would you love
That's why I'm not getting into that, because I remember that from 2 weeks ago.
I wasn't here.
It's for information.
It is.
And that's where I think it needs to begin and end.
Mhm.
When it becomes a social thing,
Yeah.
then I'll be upfront,
No,
then I hand it over to somebody else.
right. So I noticed that there are two policies that are draft,
Mhm.
which maybe need to be brought to the select board to review and approve or not. Investment policy and debt management policy.
Where's that on the agenda?
It's
This
not,
is what
I'm
I'm going
saying,
to, she's saying in the future.
if we have, I mean, if we've got, Becky did
Oh, okay,
Somebody
I see
did
what
the
you're saying.
inventory,
Yeah.
Okay.
and now we
I see
notice
what
that
you're
we
saying.
have a couple of
Okay.
draft, but, well, we're not gonna have a zoning bylaw, clearly.
So I think we put those on our to-do
Yeah.
list, you're right. Investment policy and the debt management policy. So, clarification, Steve?
So something like the delinquent tax policy would go up on the website.
Yes.
Right. And how long, are there are there 10 policies or 1,000 I mean, how long will it take to, if the decision is to put them all up there, how long would it take to get them up? Not very long.
No,
There's 11.
it's once the policies are approved and
All they gotta do is
signed
be
off.
Yeah,
scanned and
they're 12 or 14.
In this day and age, it's so much, I don't mean nicer, but it's so much more efficient to say, you don't have to come in to read a binder. You can just click on the
Yes.
tax policy online
Right.
and go about your business. So that sounds fantastic.
So I will say, however, that this delinquent tax policy is
Quite.
procedural.
Yes.
It's not a policy because it hasn't been adopted. It's been approved by an attorney, but it's not,
Who does that need to be adopted by?
I don't know, I'm
Because it's
just.
a procedure. It's
It's a
really
procedure, not a
through the
policy.
state law, the
It
regs
says
that you're
policy for
following.
collection of delinquent taxes.
Yeah.
And those are the
We
things
just-
that were internal.
So, just to clarify, there are two questions on the table. Is this a procedure and this, or is it a policy? That's question one. And the other question is, who does need to approve this officially? Because it's really in your court, I would think that does not require select board approval.
No.
We don't
No.
have nothing to do with the
Tax,
delinquent
no.
taxes.
Let's come back to that. Let's move on, but come back. Do you want to take a look at that, Sheila? And
There's
I-
a lot there.
I'm just looking at the one-page policy for collection of delinquent taxes.
Mhm.
The purpose is to establish clear guidelines so that all delinquent taxpayers will be treated fairly and will know what to expect. It would seem to me that that policy, not the rest of the procedure,
Right.
should be adopted by the town.
When you say by the town, do you mean by the select
Select
board?
board.
Yeah, I'd like to get more information on
Yeah.
that. I'd like to check with somebody about that.
So, I mean, this, not
I'm
for
not sure I
tonight's
agree with you.
discussion,
Yeah,
but
but yeah. Okay. So, clear as mud? Everybody all set? Here, yeah, good. And so just to, so that you didn't, I think really, as I recall, you can tell we've had 3 weeks between meetings, that we just wanted to chat with you as administrator of the website, to be sure if you had any
Yes.
concerns. So,
Yes.
we did approve that last meeting, sorry for that, you guys. Okay, great, thank you. Dan, you're on solar project in industrial park. Setback variance, if you'd like.
All right, so this is a project at Exit 1 Industrial Park, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's actually at the end of John Sites Drive.
Just because Ian is such a nice guy, why don't you move over so he can sort of see too, other than just your back?
Well, probably what's more important. So if you go up John Sites Drive, you've got GS Precision, you've got Webb, you've got the VA Health Center. At the very top, you've got the GS Training Center.
Mhm.
And then past there is a cable and it turns to dirt. That becomes a private road at that point. On the left is a pumping station, belongs to the town of Brattleboro. The dirt road bears to the right and goes up to a water tank that serves the town of Brattleboro. So the BDCC had actually purchased 3.3 acres from the Youngs a few years ago because they wanted to put a road up there to access more of their land. It turns out some machinations. I had control of another piece of land. They wanted that piece of land, and they offered me
They being BDCC or they
BDCC.
being-
And
no,
this all
yeah,
goes with
yeah.
GS Precision.
Yeah,
It's been,
yeah.
and you've been reading the papers about that.
Yeah.
To make a long story short, I moved my solar project from Brattleboro land that I controlled to leased land BDCC controls that's actually in Guilford now. So it's very good for Guilford in that you get the tax benefits relative to the solar field rather than Brattleboro. So I'm doing other stuff for Brattleboro for other projects, so we'll get tax benefits too. For the town of Guilford, you cannot access this from Guilford itself. There used to be Partridge Road.
Right.
If you've been on Partridge Road lately, it is covered with trees. So
I guess I
no-
haven't.
Yeah.
And you mean, so you can't drive up to Jim Young's anymore?
You can drive up to Jim Young's, but that's as far as you can go.
Okay.
Up past Jimmy's, it's all grown in and everything.
All grown in, and there's a footpath that follows the fence by 91, but that's about it. All right, so anyhow, with BDCC, we are leasing 3.3 acres of Guilford land and 0.2 acres of Brattleboro land, because it's just on the other side, so it's 3.5 acres total. But it's basically two different properties, even though, you know, it's included in our lease. In July of this year, the state legislature, basically for solar projects, have certain setbacks for property lines. So, which is 50 feet for a property line and 100 feet for a municipal road. Now, this is not a municipal road, this is a private road, so that's not an issue. But because we have this one line that we have to deal with that belongs to Guilford, it's that line, we will not be 50 feet from that line. We'll be 50 feet from the other line, which is in Brattleboro. So, but with this variance, I need to ask for ask for a resolution that, and it actually is something that is allowed in the state statute, with specific to the net metering law, which this is, which would allow me to not have to apply that 50-foot variance to the Guilford line.
The 50-foot setback.
It's all one field, right?
Yeah, but it's all one field, but
There's a line that runs through it.
there's a line that runs through it. So it puts me in a quandary that I have to ask permission. And I'm going to be on the safe side too. GS Precision actually owns the land on the other side, and I'll go to them too for the same thing because they're the northern abutter. So I'd just rather be safe than sorry and go through follow the letter of the law. So this is what I'm asking for as a resolution for this. Now we have had an aesthetic report already done on this property. There is no adverse effect either from the interstate or from anything in Guilford or from Brattleboro. That's it. And that'll be all part of the submission for the Section 248 permit. So, and actually with this and getting that final wordage from GS Precision, we'll be putting in that submission probably the end of this week.
Can you show us on the map where it says variance from the northern property line? I'm just wondering where it is on the map.
Well, you can see this is the Guilford line right here.
Where's north? Okay, so there's GS Precision.
So there's the GS
School.
Precision. And we're talking the middle of the road is where the line is. So that 0.2 acres of Brattleboro really doesn't help me much. It's just
Yeah, where is that even?
it's basically a line that just goes through the road.
We're going.
Oh, let me flip it over this way.
So
that's
50
part
feet,
of
it's
the
really
right
just
here.
up, I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, and all I'm showing in this is the amount of tree clearing that we're going to be
Right up
doing.
here.
got it.
So we're actually going to leave
Way up
some
here.
trees
Up above
between the
trailer
road
park then.
and
Which I don't know,
the field itself.
You won't.
Okay.
Wherever we
Okay,
can.
hang on, we got two conversations going
Sorry.
here, so that's right, let's just, so, Deanne was explaining to Gabby where that, the 0.2 acres of Brattleboro line is really just sort of like a run along.
That's
like-
right.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, it really is only 0.2 acres,
yeah,
but it's a long, thin
Long,
0.2 acres.
yeah, so it's just like, here's the line and the project goes just a little bit over the line.
Right.
into
And the
Brattleboro.
line is really the road,
Yeah.
not,
Yeah, in the middle of
not
the road,
proper
basically.
trees, yeah.
So, I have a hard time always thinking of why you would say no to this. Does anybody have any ideas? It seems to me like,
You'd be foolish.
sure, but I can't, is there anything that, could be a negative about this? It just seems.
I would say if this was a place that was visual,
Yeah,
that people on Guilford Center Road would see, or
Yeah.
Route 5, Coolidge Highway, would see, I'd be the first one to say, think about it before you agree to something like this.
right, but that
But-
aesthetic
but-
study's already been done, you
But the
said?
aesthetic study's already been done. The location, as you see with my projects, I really try to visually put my projects so that they have no negative impact, visual impact. So the two projects in Guilford, I'm working on the Blanchard Hill. Again, it came as a non-adverse. And this one's it and the other one. So.
So you're not just gonna drop trees, leave them laying all over the place
Oh, no,
and
no, no,
stuff
no, no,
like
no,
that?
no, no, no.
So anybody have any other questions for Dan? Anybody have any concerns or things that they can sort of, any what ifs?
So, and with that, at the back of that one statement, so I wanted to give you the Vermont state statute also that refers to that, that gives you the authority.
Steve, question?
Is there a time frame? Is it a year? I mean, is it so many years, or is it in perpetuity?
It's
Did you do-
well, this project is 25 years basically.
So that's the only other thing I would raise, is that whatever you decide
Yeah.
now, it's
You're with
20.
it.
That's right,
You have to
and
kind
then
of think about what's it gonna look like
right.
25
So you're talking
years from now.
25 years because when we decommission it, we have to take everything back to raw field.
Right, to
That's
yeah,
all.
yeah.
I move that we resolve that in connection with the net metered solar electric generation facility proposed for GLC Powersmith Solar LLC for 380 Johnson Drive, the Guilford Selectboard agrees to waive the 50-foot setback from the northern property boundary, which abuts the Exit 1 Industrial Park, consistent with Title 30, Section 248S3B of the Vermont statutes annotated.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Hell no.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good, Dan, thank you.
All right, thank you. Two quick things.
Sure.
One for the Blanchard Hill project, which is called Blanchard Hill. You did get, and actually Becky gave it to me, so that's been going through the Section 248 process. When in July, the Department of Public Service had no questions for it. We've had no one have any concerns about it. We did get a letter from Agency of Natural Resources basically saying that they want us to follow the Vermont Low Risk Site Handbook for Erosion Prevention and Sediment Control. And in fact, we are going to have that in one of our findings. We've already drafted the findings. So we're going to follow the letter of the law that they're looking for.
That's putting up your silt fences and stuff like that.
Yeah, and hay bales and whatever.
Hay bales.
So, but it's a low risk site.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna put critters in that one, right?
Looking at put it for both of them actually. Looking at
Goats,
putting
right?
lambs.
Lambs?
Lambs in May through October.
And some big dogs to keep the coyotes out.
Well, have you seen the big dog down there? Yeah, like that. Yeah, Great Pyrenees. And one final thing, just so you know, I mentioned it before the meeting. So I did write an article, and it'll be in the Guilford Gazette relative to options for Guilford residents
Oh, great.
for solar,
Thank
both
you.
for community solar and on-site.
Individual.
So, but anyone have any questions?
So
Just
you
give me a
don't
holler.
get
That
phone
is
calls from
terrific, thank you.
random people.
Right. Well, it should answer 90% of the questions, but the other 10%, just give me a call.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Thank
Thanks
you so
very
much.
If you're coming by someday and I'm outside, stop. We'll look at things. Yeah.
All right.
Next item on the agenda is Conservation Commission appointment. This is from Linda Hecker, Chair of the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission would like to nominate Gordon Little to fill our remaining empty slot. Can you please submit his name for select board approval? Thanks, Linda.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Gordon. And then the next item on the agenda was, I put it on the agenda, or I asked it to be put on, I mentioned it the last meeting, and I am, I want to have a discussion. I'm not absolutely set in my mind about this. It just came up. And in my mind, the idea that a finance committee is sometimes a good mechanism to do budget preparation. What we've always done before, just for Sheila and Gabby who are new, the select board has in a sense acted as finance committee and done the budget creation process. And I just thought, let's just talk about pros and cons. A finance committee would mean you would involve the town clerk, maybe a few residents, and a few members of the select board as opposed to the entire select board. So, people had raised it as a possible good idea, and I thought we should just see what we think about it, discuss it, so.
I've got 2 farmers, 2 fixed income, 1 road crew, and 1 town clerk.
That, your idea of who
That
would
would be my idea of a committee.
Okay, any
Did you
other?
have select board on there? 2 farmers?
But they're gonna do the work, we're just gonna get the hay out of the chaff,
I
that's
see.
all. I just feel that there's nobody that has to do a budget any better than a farmer.
All right, good comment. Any other comments or thoughts about it? Anybody have any experience with finance committee? Any?
Being on fixed income, I know a little bit about it.
I think it makes a lot of sense to have the more people involved. I know that this procedures that Becky and I set up talk about Becky and me being working on this together with other people. And I think Sean mentioned something. Was it you who mentioned last time that you would be interested in being involved in the capital budget process? And I think if we have
It was, but we're about ready to move into the high school budget, and that takes,
a lot of
usually
time.
we have like 3 meetings a week, so.
So can I ask you a question about that,
Yeah.
just as a high school board member? Does the high school board have a finance committee as such?
Well, it is the budget committee and the finance committee,
Okay.
so I'm on
So
the
those are
finance
members,
committee.
just members of that board?
Yes, that is correct.
They don't ask other people in?
No.
Sure.
The finance committee consists of other people off the select board, off the school boards of the surrounding towns,
But
correct?
they're all school board members?
They're all
That's-
school board members.
Yeah, well, and there is a Brattleboro Finance Committee, I think.
That's what I thought.
And they have input, but it doesn't have anything to do with actually establishing the budget
Right.
for the high
No,
school.
without the budget, yeah.
The budget for the high school is the administrators, the administrators are always there, superintendent is usually there, and the business manager, and then members of the school board. And it actually happens to be the finance subcommittee, which does all that.
I mean, one of my concerns about about the idea is just that you're kind of in a position of having to bring people up to speed in a sense, just in terms of the actual budget, but that may be a good thing.
So that's the operating budget,
Right.
which I think in any given year, you're probably gonna have to bring 1 or 2 people up to speed anyway.
Right.
But the capital plan budget
that's totally different.
is a brand new thing.
Right.
And we also have to go through that this year. And so, and we're asking people, I mean, I have some comments about the plan to do that, but I think we are looking at both budgets this year, an operating budget and a capital budget. And I think it would be good to have more heads involved.
So just to be clear, Sheila, what you're saying, when I had raised the idea of a finance committee, it was the idea of a finance committee to look at our operating budget. Are you talking about a finance committee to look at both budgets, just so I'm clear? I don't,
I think it would be helpful. I mean, why would you just say,
I'm just smiling thinking of our process from the first time we did the capital budget, which we don't need to talk about, but, yeah. So, anyway.
That looks like a good number.
Sir, you have something to say?
The finance, looking at our finances versus looking at the capital plan are two totally different things.
Yeah.
Probably would need a little bit more expertise doing the capital plan, maybe we're looking at the budget. What I understand is about the farmers and fixed income, they have to manage their money.
So that, you're talking about the operating
I'm
budget?
talking about the operating budget, I'm not talking about the capital plan, I'm talking about the operating budget.
I totally agree with you on that.
And the less, how can I say this without slapping somebody in the face? The less money people we get on the finance committee, the better off we are.
The less what?
The less money people we get on the finance committee, the better off we are.
So,
I guess aside from composition of any committee,
yeah, let's talk about
I was
the,
thinking about whether yes or no we want a committee,
Well,
and
yeah.
if so, for what? Because
right,
I think that's sort of, you're putting the cart before the horse.
right.
So, as far as a finance committee, and I had just assumed it was only for the operating
I
budget.
had as well, yeah.
So I hadn't really thought about the capital budget at all. But I mean, I guess my thoughts as far as having a finance committee, I think it would be helpful for the select board. I also think it will keep a knowledge base.
Mhm.
So whether people go on and off the select board, whether town administrators move, no matter what happens, there'll be a base of people that understand and can carry forward that what happened in the past and how that can be modified in the future.
So are you saying you're seeing people staying on the finance committee, or just that you're developing a more educated?
I think a more educated public and a more
More
informed group of people to create the budget.
You want Ginny Fitch on the budget, that's who you want.
Who?
Ginny Fitch, remember?
Oh,
She
God,
used to
yeah.
study that budget like you wouldn't believe, and would check people's math.
Forrest Gallup would be a good one too.
But I think that every year there's not going to be, people will move on and off, but every year there'll be someone who has some
Yeah.
institutional knowledge.
Okay. Any other comments, Sean?
Well, this sort of goes back, I had some concerns, and it had to do with the problems with this building in the spring and the leaking roof and everything. And so I had some concerns, actually I brought them up a couple of times, and I think Becky had brought the little report that I got from an insulator to the select board meeting. And basically, my feeling is, you know, for one reason or another, nothing has been done, so we're going into the heating season with exactly the same situation as we did last year. I know that, I'm not sure that this is the place that I should bring it up, but I know that it is a concern that I've had since spring, and I really haven't been able to voice it.
Well, I think if, not to respond defensively, but I will say that I think that when I think what has been done, the idea of the capital, of making capital plan has to do with being more planful about maintenance of buildings. So that you're right in that we didn't say we've got to deal with the roof of this building, but what we said is we need to make a plan for looking at all of these capital assets and going forward in a way that we, as we do with our equipment, that we sort of take care of things so that we don't end up with leaky roofs.
Yeah, a correction, it has nothing to do with the roof, it has to do with the.
What you're talking about is the total renovation of the heating system.
No, no, not at all. That is not what I'm saying at all.
Well, you're
No,
talking
I
about
mean,
the
nobody's
heat.
asked
Okay.
me what my ideas are. so
Well,
I'm
but
just saying.
just, Sean, the reason why we hadn't dealt with, you know, we are in, our budget was set. So
Yes.
to
No,
do
I
something
understand.
in the summer of 2015, it was really not an option when we had developed the budget in October of
No, no, and
2014.
you express that.
So Dick, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to clarify that. But my point was, we're not doing nothing. We're looking at how to be more planful and yet financially prudent at the same time. So,
Okay, but don't make the assumption that I'm advocating for a redo of the heating system in this building, please.
I didn't make that assumption.
No, Dick did.
Okay.
That's basically
That
what
has
it comes
nothing
down
to do
to.
with it.
Okay, all right. Let's not get lost in the weeds. So basically, and I don't want to make more work for us, but I just, you know, I thought along the lines that you were saying, Gabby, that it might be helpful to have input in a financial committee to give input, and the composition we can work on later. We're not going to do any appointments right away, but do people feel like they're in a position to do a vote up and down about the idea of a finance committee for the operating budget only?
What if we get a group together, not necessarily the makeup I just quoted, and had them come to our budget meetings, and maybe they could work separately after the meeting, but they come to the meeting and know where we are, and they could, if they wanted to meet and discuss separately, they could.
I would see the budget committee, the finance committee having select board members on it, not all five of us, but a few.
So
Well,
not
yeah,
all
it's just-
five members of the select board have
Yeah.
to participate in the budget, the entire budget process. Is
We
that-
would anyway, and that's why I'm just, see if they were here at our budget meetings, that they would come up to the speed you're talking about, know where we are, and they can go off and say, well, maybe we can do this, that, the other thing, and come to the next meeting and say, this is what we've talked about, and present it to us.
I think they might be talking about the same thing, that they go off and they help us create a budget, and then, you know, obviously, the select board needs to create, I mean, I've never
Yeah,
done it, I
select board's
assume
gotta
that's what
approve it
happens,
anyway.
we've got to go
Yeah.
through it and approve it, right?
Yeah.
But I think we're sort of saying the same, obviously, the whole select board has to be involved in the
Right.
budgeting process. But that they would sort of give us the,
Yeah.
you know, do the dirty work there.
But if they were at our meetings, our budget meetings, they
Or-
would know what dirty work had to be
Or
done.
like any other committee, like the conservation committee, that people show up, you know, as necessary. But I don't think we need to maybe even go that detailed.
I know from one gentleman that said that he was on the budget committee and he lost a lot of business when they did the work, so. Jim Good, years ago.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
So,
Ann?
yeah, sorry, Rick.
I just want to let you know, in my past experience working in towns, they've always had finance committees, typically a 5-member board. They're advisory only, but they are so helpful. It takes some of the pressure off the select board. You may have one select board member on the finance committee, you may have none, because they're gonna come back and report to you anyway, based on discussions back and forth, kind of following what Dick was saying. And they're just extremely helpful, and I would strongly recommend, if you're interested in doing that.
And
to go
it would
ahead and do
be, I'm, so my goal was for tonight was just to get the concept out there. Obviously, you know, we need to draft language, kind of what Becky was saying about the role and the composition we would get to down the line. But in terms of further exploration of the concept, and I know we're in September, so we need to move ahead with this, and maybe coming up with some language. Are people in favor of either of exploring this further, or of creating a budget committee, a finance committee, excuse me, whatever you want to call
We
it?
need to explore it a little more, maybe, I think.
Maybe
Find
come
out.
up with specific language,
Yeah.
specific.
So maybe the next step in exploration would be to draft the role of a finance committee for us to think about.
Maybe VLCT could be helpful with
Yeah.
that.
And it would be good to throw a little bait out there and see if anybody's gonna take it. I mean, we could say we're gonna have a finance committee, nobody wants it.
That's true. Then we're in.
No, I don't want that job, no.
All right, so I think that's a good idea. To create, Sheila, what you had talked about create
True,
some,
but you know, that's funny.
create some language that we would then approve in a more, that would be more solid than just this, a conceptual. I just wanted to have a conversation about the concept, so. So let's get language that we can approve at the next meeting, and then that we would deal with, it would be more specific in its scope of work and how it functioned in relation to the select board. Okay. I don't believe we need a motion on that. I don't think so. Okay, capital improvement plan and budget.
And this is the one where we found the, didn't we?
It's this, Becky's memo, right? To the
Policy that
capital
we.
improvement plan and budget, yes.
Oh,
So
Okay, go
Becky
ahead.
drafted a memo in August,
Keep talking.
which she sent around to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the only page
You
of
wanted
it.
the meeting.
Okay.
The
I
other,
think I emailed.
the other pages were, so this was to, so this memo, is basically Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, the implementation stage of where we've adopted the capital budget policy. Now we're supposed to be meeting with the different departments to create the capital budget for the next 5 years. And so there's the steps that we talked about in the last couple of meetings were to create a list of assets, to detail recent improvements, to talk about what needs to be done in the coming 5 years, to try to figure out how much it's going to cost so that we can have a capital budget, a 5-year rolling capital budget. And then Becky drafted this memo to send to, she says all town officials. I actually re-looked at this today for the first time since I got back, and I think we need to send it to town administration, highway, and library only, not all town officials. I think, so I don't know, I mean, I don't want to comment on my edits to this memo if people are not familiar with it.
Well,
But this is something that Becky, this is the next step in what Becky and I were working
I
on
haven't read
before.
you had mentioned those edits before, and, you know,
I don't think I literally just went through this today because I left the day after this memo was drafted.
right, but I think at some point we had talked about
And I-
library and only
Yeah.
the
So-
highway and.
So the addresses is one edit. This talks about a little bit about, it mixes a little bit operating and capital budget, so I wanted to separate those out. It also just says describe your projects. It doesn't talk about listing the assets, and it's another step that we had talked about. So I think there's some work to do on this memo.
Okay, yeah, I think we need to table
and
this
maybe-
so we can see the
Just
clean
not
copy.
to interrupt you, but I think our assets are already built into, with like the Gatsby 34.
We have to have.
Yes.
You're right, but we wanted to.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
To
Now I
have
got
them,
it.
to have them inventoried by
Yeah.
whoever's submitting
Mhm,
everything.
mhm.
Okay.
So maybe Becky and I should sit down and work on
Well,
this.
I think we should table this and come back to it when we've had a chance to see the final clean copy.
Okay.
And you're right, we did see it in August. I was aware that there was still more work to be done. Maybe that was just a conversation you and I had, so I think that, you know, at that point, it's a question of us then acting on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, next item on the agenda is the wellness programs. Last meeting, we had a presentation, 2 people came down from VLCT and talked about some options for us in terms of wellness. After that, I did speak to Dan about the potential for road crew interest. He talked about that when they had done this program in the past. And Becky, I think you sent out a kind of an all call to see what people thought. Did you get? You
Didn't hear from anybody.
You didn't hear from anybody. My thought was that it would probably be a good thing to have a, you know, I'm drawing a blank on her name, the name of the woman who was here.
Oh,
Heidi, that to have Heidi come down and have a presentation, which is what she offered, and I would think that select board members would certainly be welcome, although, you know, work schedules might preclude, but during a regular work day, because after that, as I understood it, then she might make a plan with an individual to meet with them and make a plan with them based on their interest and needs, and that would be it. So I thought that would be a good step to follow through on. And Dan said it would be absolutely fine. He didn't say, oh yeah, we really want to do this, but he didn't say, oh no, we don't want to do this. He was like, sort of sure, that would be okay. So I think, having not heard from anybody, we could just invite Heidi, set a time, do it around a time that's convenient, I would say, especially for the road crew, because they're out of the building, and obviously not on a Friday. So, okay? Do we, again, I don't really believe we need a motion on that, just an invitation?
No.
Okay.
And before you go to,
Sure.
away from old business, I have just a quick question. I went to a floodplain administrator training
thank
on
you.
September 3rd.
Yeah.
I think the board would probably, I'd like to present some information to the
Good.
board, either verbally or in writing or in both. So would you want me to just send it to somebody, Becky or somebody, the basic report, and then you can decide if you want a verbal presentation, or would you rather have me come and talk about it? What's your pleasure if either of those two?
I think it'd be good to come in and talk about it. It's not on the agenda, but if you could send it out, we could look at it, and you could
Put on the agenda for the next meeting. Are you available September 28th?
Yeah.
I'll check that, but, so what I'll do is I'll put some notes down, I'll send it to Becky,
Yeah.
then you'll know what the general gist of it
That would be
is.
great.
We'll do that, because I
Thank
think there
you.
are some things that came out of it that you might find of interest, and I think the town has to do, so.
I appreciate that, Steve, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get it on the agenda for the next meeting. Appreciate it. Do you have an update for the highway?
I do.
Thank you.
I have all kinds of stuff for the highway. They're still mowing, they're starting to get the roads up this way. That's the good news. The bad news is we have about 400 feet of road that's going into the brook. It's gotta be all dug out and redone.
Where?
Right down here, where they put that little patch on.
He was anticipating, that happened right, you know.
That road was built in the 50s, and it's just gradually.
it's gradually
Yeah.
going like that.
Oh, so you're saying it's going to go into the brook?
Yeah, that's an
I'm-
ASAP with a
No, I
capital
understood,
S.
because Dan had mentioned
Yeah,
that to
the
me.
other one is the bridge that's out, it's gonna be out, that's,
Which bridge is
did
that?
an estimate on that now, it's looking at about 250,000, 200,000. That's a need to be done yesterday project,
Which
What
bridge?
bridge?
Hale Road.
Not the one that they just did.
No,
I keep
This-
driving on Hale Road and
this-
counting bridges.
that's the final bridge on Hale Road,
The
and
final
the-
bridge.
and the bottom fell out of it, and they
Yep.
put a steel plate on, but it's got to be repaired before winter.
And is that on our nickel entirely?
That's it's on a nickel, but it can be, I don't wanna get into the details right now, but it can be worked out.
Should we be talking with Mark Pickering about that? Is there any?
No,
Is it too
no,
late?
no, excuse me,
And is it too
no,
late to submit anything?
no,
No, it's not in the hazard mitigation things, not related to anything.
It's a hazard, but I mean, it's a mitigation hazard.
It's
no.
not related to
What-
anything from
Right,
Irene?
what's happened is,
No.
it's a corrugated bridge,
Bridge.
okay? What it is it's a poured bridge, right? And the bottom of the bridge
Didn't mean
is
to
just,
get you.
well,
Uh-huh.
and it's right, and it's not a two-lane bridge, it's a one-lane bridge.
Mhm.
And what it is where the tracks, where your car drives, there's a big hole.
So, it sounds like it'd be good to get Danny here at the next meeting. If we-
Danny was planning on making it tonight, but
Yeah.
some things came up. And
We'll have a lot more, yeah, he played
Yeah.
golf.
He's
Yeah.
playing golf.
Say what it is, don't be.
I said some things came up.
All right, so,
But that's definitely has to be repaired, and there's financial issues of it
yeah.
are available to be, yeah.
Okay, so I will call Danny tomorrow, but let's just.
He won't be around tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So is there a plan in place for how to proceed right now? If it, I mean, like, that only gives us a couple
The
months to get a bridge
engineer,
in.
the engineer's gonna be looking at it and seeing what has to be done, and I think now just sit back and wait for the cost is gonna be, and then wait to see how the financing can be worked out.
So is Dan gonna be around on Thursday? I'm not sure. when.
Yeah, he'd be around, yeah.
I'll get in touch with him, but we'll put him on the next agenda. Yeah, that's a big piece of news.
So the paving that was scheduled for Guilford Center Road
That's not gonna be
is
done.
not happening.
That's not gonna
Yeah.
happen.
Because it's
Because of this road
pouring
down there.
good money
Because
after
of-
bad, because it's
yeah,
on top of a
because-
bad foundation.
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that was the paving we were going to do this
That's
year.
the 160
It's gonna be done, they're gonna do the hollow
or
road
whatever.
instead.
Yep, the hollow road's gonna happen
Okay,
instead of
so-
Center Road.
And how old was the bridge?
Oh, God.
Yeah, almost that old, yes, yes, yeah, I.
Not that old?
Yeah.
No.
When he
It's
said,
old.
oh God, I
Oh,
said
God.
almost that old,
Okay.
yeah, it's old.
It's
Yeah,
old.
It's a corrugation, and it's the last bridge on that road, so we get that
Right
done.
before the Halifax line, you can't miss it. Just look for the big steel plate if you don't know where Hale is.
I do know. I know exactly where it is.
So any excess weight permits?
No.
Okay. So I think we'll move right into finance and payroll and warrants.
Go ahead.
I know you got it.
I would like to make the following motion for payroll of $830 for $4,874.95. Payroll of $9,600 for $5,936.07. Payroll of $913 for $6,472.22. For a total of payroll for $17,283.24. Along with that, warrant number 16-05 for $26,289.21, and warrant 05 DP for $93.50. For a total of warrants of $26,382.71, with a grand total of all expenses $43,665.95.
I think a point of interest that has been brought up to me is about the warrants, not the payroll, but the warrants. Somebody asked me what those warrants are for, and if there's some way to give a quick overview of what those warrants were in the future, not tonight, but in the
You mean
future.
in
It'd be
other
like
words-
parts and pieces and oil and gas and supplies
Yeah,
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
just sort of, you have to
Travel
give me blow by
reimbursement.
blow, but just sort of something. around-
Let's do this motion and then discuss
Okay,
that.
yeah,
So is there a second to Troy's motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, payroll, and that's for, you did all of them together.
Yes.
All right, so
did.
Dick, your concept was that it would be good to do an
It-
overview.
It
of-
wasn't my concept, but somebody asked me about it, what the warrants, what do they go for? And it'd be sort of not a necessity, but,
So they kinda wanna know what the money's going towards.
right,
I think, we certainly have not done that in the past.
never have, and it's not,
I think that what we have done, just again, very informally, is we have noticed, we have mentioned the reason this is so large is we did the paving, or the reason this, a big
Yeah.
portion of this was X. Beyond that, you think it's good to say, do more details and,
if you buy a shovel, they don't need to know that, but I mean, like, the bigger items, bigger stuff that they could.
I certainly have no objections in that, to that, idea of, again, it's just informing people.
And I forget who it was that asked me, and now the conversation came up, but they did show an interest in, when they give the warrants, it might be good to know what.
Right,
roughly
so
what
for
some of them-
example, you would say, these are payroll, so that's not, so, but, you know, you would maybe pull out a few big ticket items and make mention of them.
Like gravel.
Gravel.
Gravel, big
Health
ticket
insurance,
items.
your workers' comp.
I don't have any
Three
objections.
big
That
ones
was
on
the
that
big
one.
one.
Does anybody have any other comments about that suggestion?
I think it's fine.
I think it's fine.
Sure.
Wait till October, and I'm gonna let Gabby do the big one in October.
Yeah.
Makes my year girl. 3 points.
So communications,
We had actually scanned and sent over to everybody, it just seems to work better. Dan had actually talked a little bit about the communication that come in from A&R about their comments and conditions on the project for the solar project on Tinker Hill.
which is the same as what Dan was calling Blanchard
Blanchard.
Cemetery.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They changed the name because they're not going through Tinker Hill, I think is why. Yeah, okay.
And then I wasn't sure if you want to make the announcement about the Sweet Pond celebration for Saturday.
Yes, thank you, Becky. On the 19th, which is this Saturday, there's a celebration, obviously not of the reopening of the pond, but of the fact that we've got the funding and that they're gonna do some work, I think, in 2016 and in prep for the reconstruction of the dam in 2017. It is from noon to 3. Rain date is Sunday, September 20th. They're encouraging people to use the main entrance, park in the small parking lot, or if it's full, along the driveway, but leave room for cars to pass. This is the house, there's an actual home there, so that's the driveway you're parking along. Phil Gates lived there, and they have very kindly given permission to people to park there. There's gonna be cookouts, short speeches by legislators, music by Patty Carpenter, who wrote a song about Sweet Pond, and optional walk around the trails that go around what used to be the pond. So
And she wants an RSVP.
yes, I have RSVP'd. Are other people going to be able to make it? I will be there. So
I will not.
okay.
I'll be in Stanford looking for a cemetery.
So plan next week.
Yeah. Okay. So
The town health officer has determined who owns property on Johnston Pasture Road, so those letters have gone out again to both people, the landowner and the renter.
great. Thank you.
And this is the first time I've seen this, is that we have the animal intakes from Wyndham County Humane Society, so you can see like
Yeah, there
what
was
they
a
did
dog and
for-
a cat taken down there. I don't think it was by our
Oh,
officers,
just-
Down
it's
where?
nice to get
down
the
to
feedback.
the Humane Society.
Both they were. It says I'm assuming they were taken in by a citizen. Now, my question about this is an old question that we had a long time ago. If we have a contract with Humane Society now.
Absolutely no cats,
Yeah.
and the only ones authorized to take dogs are the dog officer or the constable.
Because if a citizen takes them in, we still are going to be paying for them,
Yes.
and that's a little bit of a problem.
So they don't advise the citizen?
The last citizen that
Well,
took
the
one
citizen
in,
can, but it's at their own expense.
I mean, the Humane Society tells the citizen that it's at their expense?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. The problem was, I think the last one we dealt with was the dog was from Brattleboro anyway, and somebody picked it up and took it in and said it was from Guilford. and-
Right.
So
They picked it up
Becky,
in
these
Guilford.
ones, we assume that these are ones that were taken in at an individual's expense, at their own expense.
Yeah.
We
Right.
have not paid for them,
Yeah.
okay. So, and that's it for communications, pretty light this time, all right. So, motion to go into executive session?
I move we go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
You
And
need to invite
include-
the people.
I'm sorry?
You need to invite the
And
people.
inviting Becky to join us. Sorry, thank you.
That's all right.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so. We are exiting from executive session, and I will read this letter that we have received in executive session, and it does require an action. Dear members of the Select Board, thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve the residents of Guilford this year. After careful consideration, please let this letter serve as my notice of resignation as the town administrator. My last day of employment with the town of Guilford will be October 2nd, 2015. Sincerely, Rebecca Stone.
make the motion that we accept the letter of resignation with the utmost regret
And appreciation.
and appreciation.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion.
Motion carried, no, and no, I didn't say all opposed, I'm still sort of no opposed. Motion carried unanimously, so. Thank you, Becky, thank you for your service to the town of Guilford, for jumping into a pretty deep pool and getting a lot of things up to speed, working hard on, especially working with this on policies and getting things in good shape. So we will move forward and with your help, have a smooth transition. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.